She found me when the world was quiet, when no one cheered my name, when my clothes bore dust, not gold, and my dreams were just whispers in the wind. She sat with me on broken stones and told me I was already royal. Not for my blood, not for my future, but for the fire I carried when I had nothing to offer. I remember her hands, not soft from silk, but strong from life. Hands that held my fears without fear. Hands that never asked for rings, only truth. She believed in me before I believed in myself. When my voice shook with doubt, she was the silence that made me steady. She poured faith into my soul like water, into cracked desert clay. Others came for the crown, the power, the palace gates, and the legacy. But she came for the man who only had stories and eyes full of hunger for more than survival. I rose. The world saw me climb, but she saw what it cost. The sleepless nights, the lonely prayers, the pieces of me that broke to build a throne. And when the gold arrived, when the world bowed and the titles rang loud, she did not change. She did not envy, did not cling. She stood in the shadows with the same love she gave in the light. They called her simple. They called her plain. But they never saw the way she loved, with a strength no jewel could match, with a loyalty kings die longing for. Now I sit in rooms too large for one soul, with crowns too cold for the heart. And I wonder, where is she? Does she remember the boy with no name? Does she still hum the songs we sang under stars, not chandeliers?
I could trade the world I hold now for the sound of her voice calling me just a man.
Not, your highness, I would.
Because riches are loud, but her love was silence, and it filled me more than gold ever could.
He loved me when I had nothing, and I was everything when I had her. I remember him, not the man in gold, not the shadow seated on thrones of silence, but the boy with callous hands and eyes that dreamed of skies too wide for maps. He came to me with nothing, no title, no promise. Only stories carved from wounds in a heart too full to carry alone. He was broken in beautiful ways. I never tried to fix him. I only held the cracks and whispered, "You are enough, even now, even now." I loved him when the world was blind. Before the banners bore his name, before every step he took echoed through halls of marble. He walked barefoot then, and laughed like thunder in the rain. I remember the night he told me his dreams, not of crowns, but of freedom, of a quiet home, a horse of fire, and someone who'd never leave. That someone was me. But dreams change. Fame came like a flood, and I stood still while the tide took him. Suddenly, the boy I knew wore masks. Not of lies, but of duty. Of weight I could not carry, of silence I could not break. I did not beg him to stay. Love should not be chased. I watched him rise like the sun, knowing it meant I would live in shadow. And now they praise him, worship him. They write songs with his name, but none of them know how he once wept in the quiet of my arms, or how I kissed the scars no one could see. I don't hate him. I never could. Even now, if he walked through my door with the crown in one hand and his heart in the other, I'd only ask, "Do you remember who you were when you were mine?" Because I didn't love the prince. I loved the man before the marble, the soul before the sword, the dreamer before the king. And even if he never returns, he will always find a part of himself waiting for him in the woman who loved him. I saw her, not in a palace, not at a ball, but in a quiet market beneath no spotlight at all. She was standing there, hands full of oranges, smiling at a child who wasn't mine. Her hair was streaked with silver now, but her eyes, they hadn't aged a day. My breath caught, not out of love reborn, but out of memory, of who I was when I was hers. She didn't bow. She didn't flinch. She just met my gaze, calm as moonlight, like a woman who'd made peace with all her ghosts, including me. I wanted to say her name, but my throat betrayed me. How do you speak to the past when it stands so solid in the present? She nodded just once, not cold, not warm, like someone who had already forgiven me long before I knew I needed it. We didn't speak. There was no dramatic ending, no reaching hands across lifetimes. Only silence. Only understanding. I watched her walk away, her child tugging her sleeve, her laughter lighter than anything I'd ever carried in my gilded halls. And in that moment, I knew she was happy. Not because she found another me, but because she found herself. I turned back into my world. The guards, the gold, the weight of names. And for the first time, it all felt small. She had loved me when I was no one. And I had lost her when I tried to become everything. We met again, not for a second chance, but for the ending we never had. You deserve. And sometimes that's enough. They told me a crown was a gift, a legacy, a throne carved by blood and bound by history. But no one warned me it could also be a prison. I wore it for years, let it shape my back, let it silence my heart, let it take names from my mouth and replace them with titles. Choke. I smiled when they clapped. I ruled when they begged. I made peace with my loneliness and called it purpose. But the truth came quietly, not with war, but with a memory of laughter without guards, of love without weight, of her. And I realized the boy who once dreamed under desert stars wouldn't even recognize the man who sat alone in a palace built by forgetting. So I rose, not to command, but to leave. I walked through marble halls with no audience, down past velvet drapes and golden doors, out into a world that didn't need my name, only my soul. And I left it there, the crown, on a table, no guards, no ceremony, just silence. Because sometimes the bravest thing a king can do is stop being one. Now I walk roads without titles. I eat fruit with my hands. I speak in my own voice. I feel things fully, without hiding them beneath silk and armor. And no, I didn't find her again. But I found something just as rare, myself. And in that quiet triumph, without gold, without power, without her, I am still whole, because the crown was heavy, but my truth is light. And I wear that now, freely, forever. Love, it wasn't the fire that burned fast and bright. It wasn't the chase, the conquest, or the poetry written in the dark. It wasn't even the promise of forever. I thought it was. I thought love meant claiming, holding, keeping. But now, with quiet mornings and echoes in empty rooms, with the crown no longer weighing me down, with no one left to impress, I know better. Love was the silence she gave me when I had no words. The way she looked at me like I was already enough. Love was her hand, tired, cracked from life, still reaching for mine when the world called me a failure. It was her laughter when we had nothing. It was how she waited for the world to see me the way she already did. It was never about the palaces. It was never about who stayed, who left, or even who hurt more. It was about who saw me, truly, and didn't flinch. Now I see lovers walking hand in hand, and I don't envy them. Because love, real love, is not about being together. It's about being known, and still being loved. I've been kissed by queens. I've been worshipped by crowds. But only one ever looked at me like I was a man, not a symbol. And I let her go. Not out of malice, but because I didn't know what love truly was, not then. But I do now. So if this world gives me one last chance, not to rewrite the past, but to speak the truth, I would say this. Love isn't loud. It's not fireworks or fury. It's not forever or flawless. Love is quiet, steady, steady. Free. And if you find it, hold it gently. Not like a crown, but like a flame that needs breath, not control.